All right, good evening. Welcome. As I was hoping that by the time this panel takes over, there would be nobody left. We might as well all gather around and have a conversation than sit here, really. I don't know, But anyway, it's wonderful, and I was wondering why somebody would trust me with such an eminent panel, but I'm glad somebody, who organizes this panel always makes a mistake, so I'm happy to be here. It's a very difficult subject, exciting subject for a number of reasons. First is that I get frightened when I read statistics, which says a global survey recently said 51% employees said that if violating company's compliance helps me to do my job easily, I would do that. 90% in other surveys said that if I could push my official email to my personal device or my personal email account and that makes it easier for me to work, I will do that, even if it is restricted by the company's restrictions. I wrote an exciting survey that 36% employees at least one day a week work from home. When you talk to millennials, somebody wrote recently that their core competence today is to be able to break down cardboard boxes sent by Amazon and do reverse origami. And the biggest commodity that you find around today is convenience, because everybody is looking for convenience in that form. And we find that in workplace, people are talking about collaboration, lifelong learning, open work systems, personal values beyond company values, their own belief system. So we are kind of experiencing something tumultuous. We talked about many things. I just want to remind you that somebody said history repeats itself. I just want to add to that great panelists repeat each other. If we sound like the previous panels, just understand that's a great panel here, So the way I want to run this panel is I will have two questions in common for all panelists. The first one and the last one. And in between, I will put some questions to different panelists differently. I will take 2 breaks in between the questions to take any comments, questions that you may have. So my first question to all of you. I know some of you are very young, Pawan may not agree with me if I say that, but that's why I've not finished myself, so I'm not going to the young and old. All I'm saying is, all of you started someday in your professional career, when you had a first day, a first week, a first month, first quarter. If you look back on your professional life of that first month, week, quarter, and the workplace that you had at that point in time, and the workplace that you have today, do you really find there is any fundamental, substantial difference between the two workplaces, or is it all cosmetic?
I can go first.
Sure.
I don't think it's the workplace that matters as much in terms of fundamental difference as what people are truly motivated by. There's always a generation, whatever name you call it, an X and a Y and a millennial and a Gen Next, whatever that be. We were next once upon a time. I'm Generation Xer. What we came in with and what we look for is not fundamentally different, according to me, versus what people are looking for now. The fundamental values of what inspires people remain the same over all of these years. There's a survey that was done by the Potential Project where they polled 20,000 people in 20 countries and came up with 20 fundamental words, values, that people get up in the morning and go to work for. We were the same. Today's Gen Next, whatever you call it, are the same. What workplaces could get away with at that point in time versus today, they're very different. There's a new world called social, and we are all social beings, which we knew, but we're now social in steroids. And connectivity enables the new to come in and question the ways of the old. So while I did start my work life where I had a boss who wanted all of us to hang our keys in his office, I was in a company where there were 3 bathrooms. I think the prior panel talked about it. One said managers, the other said men, and the third one said women. And I was the first woman manager who went and said, now which bathroom is mine? What would you like me to use? So yes, there were some visible differences, but I really come back to in these generational conversations to people are fundamentally the same. They want to be respected, they want to be recognized, they want their ideas to mean something, and that has not changed.
Well, just to go back, do you feel different in any way as you walk into your workplace today than when you did the first time ever you started working?
I can no longer pass for 30 under 30, 40 under 40, and most recently 50 under 50. I don't feel any different. So I don't know if my brain is wired differently, but I actually do empathize with people across my organization, especially with the young ones coming in, because those days are pretty vivid in my head of what I felt coming in and walking through large corporations. I've only worked in large corporations.
Great, may your tribe grow. Who next?
Okay, so I guess for me that's many, many years ago, many more than most people. I think workplace has not changed much, okay? How we work has changed, but not the workplace. That time also we had colleagues, a boss who had a secretary, and we were wondering when will we get a secretary and so on and so forth. What has changed clearly is workplace is a lot more connected, a lot many more devices to work with. At that time there weren't any. I remember in 93 when I came back to India after working for 14 years. I brought a laptop with me, and I was the only one in India with a laptop at that time, and that had 10 megabyte of memory. 10 megabyte, that was very big. So workplace hasn't changed. The interactions with colleagues, I don't think has changed much. Depending on what level you are at, you still have the same level of same kind of interaction with colleagues. How you work may have changed. How you work may have changed because information is available at fingertips. And 40 years ago, to get information was an ordeal, almost always. And you need to put an army of people to go and find something, some data, some information that you need. Today, everything is here, whatever you want. So that certainly makes it easier to do a lot of things. Complexity has gone up significantly because of almost everything becoming hyper-competitive, and therefore the margin of error being very, very small in whatever you do. So complexity has gone up. I think competitiveness in the workplace has also gone up because there is some kind of a race that is there amongst youngsters especially, and that does make competitiveness, and which is good because that does tend to bring the best out of people. So a mix. Environment not changed, but the way we work has changed.
It's interesting you say that. Somebody said work is what we do and not a place that we go to. So, I think perhaps that's changing the concept. So Abhishek, what about you?
I do think since when I started 17 years ago and what the workplace now, there has been a meaningful change in, especially if I think of myself as 23 and entering the workplace, and when 23-year-olds enter the workplace today and how they approach it. I think the level of entrepreneurial feeling has significantly increased. People want to feel in control because they also want to, be responsible, but they want to feel in control. And that's what I see is the big change in workplaces today. We were very okay 17, 25, 20 years ago being in a more command and control environment. Whereas what I feel today is that workplaces are being set up so that people feel that it's, this whole thing about an open plan office or all those things. It's really about people feeling that they are as responsible or as much in control as anybody else on the floor. And, technology, the availability of information, the kind of, gadgets in the workspace, these are all enablers. But what I feel is really different is the fact that today a new person joining the workforce feels more in control, wants to have higher responsibility, and therefore is almost semi-entrepreneurial when he's starting off.
Well, you can see an entrepreneur himself can bring in that flavor. Abhini.
I think for me, the workplace has changed in a very different way. I think when I joined the Tata Group, my first assignment was with Indian Hotels Company. And I remember I was in 2003 looking to get 3 weeks off because I was getting married. And asking your boss, who was a lady at that time, about it was almost like, okay, is she going to really approve it or not? Is it too much? And when I fast forward today, the discussion with your manager is not about 3 weeks leave, it's about 4 weeks leave or 2 to 3 months off when you get married. And probably you'll get advice where to go, where to book, and it'll be a very different kind of a conversation. So I think the way that life and our families have woven ourselves into the workplace is very, very different. I think people recognize and respect that, whether you're a millennial or an older person. I think the whole aspect about decision making has changed because today a very young store manager is aware of what is happening in the company and what is happening in the environment way ahead of probably the board members, just because of the sheer connectivity. So I think there's a lot of pressure on leadership and boardrooms to be very, very agile, which was not the case earlier. I think that's the impact of technology on decision making. And what it's done for, just the work-life balance or the way that people look at work, to your comment about work is not a place to go to, it's very much part, it's interconnected. I think people do identify themselves not just with the tag of who they are and what they do, but what the company means and purposeful. I think I was watching a video recently that most millennials want to know what is the impact that your company is having on society. And if you asked that a few years back, people thought you were really cuckoo unless you worked for, an organization like the Tatas, which are known for the values or otherwise. But today, even young entrepreneurs, even if you look at new age companies, OYO or Uber, they talk about what is the impact they're going to have on humanity on a very large scale. So decision making, integrating life and work more, and looking for purpose in life as well as at work, I think these are the fundamental shifts for me.
Great. So, Pawan, let me move to you on this question, because as I grew up as a student and I read, I think historically, and we have Volkswagen representative here as well, most innovations at workplace came from your industry, auto industry. The assembly line, the flexible lean manufacturing or autonomous work groups and things like that. But today, that space has been taken over by new age companies like Google and Amazon and all of that. So if you look at this whole workplace innovation concept, do you think there will be in future dominant sectors like automobile that will be pioneers of it, or it will come from all kinds of sources?
Well, I cannot say there cannot be automotive sector because we still need to have. Stefan, you agree? Okay, so there will be an automotive sector. Let me approach this question somewhat differently. I think it's a very interesting question because we have moved from the traditional industries like automotive, shipbuilding, steel making to the tech companies like Google, Microsoft and all. But the new age now are the small startups, okay? And where the disruption will happen in the industry will be from the small startups. And the large companies, if they do not learn how to work with small startups or be able to nurture startups within the companies, and that's not very easy to do, they will perish, they will not survive, because the world will be disrupted for sure. So I'll take automotive as an example. We know that, everybody knows that 5 to 10 years from now, automotive industry will look very different than what it is today. The 4 mega trends that we all talk about, the connected, the shared, electric, and autonomous, will change the world, but nobody really can write the script of what the change will be. Who will define that change? I don't think it will be defined by the large companies, sorry, Stefan. It will be defined by the startups, companies that don't exist today. And those big companies who are able to leverage them would innovate the companies of the future. So it is not the startups by themselves who can do it, not the large companies by themselves that can do it. There will be examples, exceptions like Tesla and all who can come from a startup to very large automotive companies, but it will be a marriage between startups and the large companies that will do the innovation. There will, I think, still be large companies, but if I take electric vehicles as an example, because that is being talked about quite a bit today, the barrier to entry in EVs is lot less than barrier of entry in a diesel-powered vehicle or gasoline-powered vehicle, and therefore, in some sense, many more smaller companies could come. Today in India, there are 100 companies making electric three-wheelers, and only 4 companies making diesel or petrol three-wheelers. And that kind of thing will happen to cars also as the cars become more electric, and therefore, there would be a reorientation of industry dynamics for sure. And again, as I said earlier, nobody knows what the script will be.
Thank you. Companies like 3M, in 1980s, as I was a student, I think, when you talk about innovation, you couldn't talk about it without 3M. But as I was giving examples to Pawan, there are many claimants to that space today. So once you have been a leader in innovation and then you find all these new guys coming in, does it become harder to create innovation, particularly workplace innovation, or they create an ecosystem where you can learn and yet be more innovative?
That's a great question, Santrup. I was asked, we were being benchmarked on innovation, as we always do in many countries, by India's largest corporate house. And they said, what is your innovation strategy? And I said, our strategy is innovation. There's a big difference between the two. So for 117 years to be considered an innovative company, not just considered, but to have 30% of your sales come from products invented and solutions invented in the last 5 years, that takes a certain culture. Pawan alluded to it. You either have to work with a new age startup mentality, or you better have startups within your organization. Our organization is loosely woven, hundreds of startups that are forever coming up with new ideas and asking for money. And that requires a certain culture of questioning, of healthy disrespect for authority. I think we talked about command and control, and the days are well over. The half-life of organizations have gone down quite dramatically. We have known this and seen this, we as in those who came before us in 3M. In the 1950s, we had a very, very well-known leader called McKnight, who said at that time, and it goes back to the prior panel, men and women who are smart would want to come in, and he included women, in the 50s, who would want to come in and do things their own way. And management that is destructively critical, or is essentially putting fences around people and getting sheep, will kill initiative and will not be innovative. So that is our culture. We strongly encourage, no matter where you are in the organization, to ask questions, to ask why and why not, what if. Those are the questions we encourage all the time. So we believe that we can't be an innovative company without workplace innovation. Probably one of the reasons why for 22 years I haven't felt like there is a prior world and new world. We've always had this next coming in, and the next needed different expressions. But the four core fundamental drivers of what drives the workplace, and the place may be anywhere, right? We had Flex 16 years ago. That could be anywhere. But it's that culture of thinking differently and culture of allowing all kinds of thoughts and vectors of thought to be there. That's what we have institutionalized.
Very well. So Avani and Abhishek, there's a different area, We find a lot of workplace innovation is happening in response to the changing demographics of the workplace. More and more younger people, we talked about millennials earlier, and their values are changing. They want to be always connected and all of that. Open plan offices, Pawan talked about. But in your view, is there a business logic necessity for all this workplace innovation? Or it's simply a paranoia of corporations that would I get left behind? Would I not be able to attract talent? Would I not be able to retain talent? Is it fear which is driving it? Or is there a stronger business impact and logic that is driving workplace innovation?
I think I'll probably kind of answer this with two examples. There is a Chinese company, Haier, in white goods, right? Facing very stiff competition in the United States a few years back. And the CEO of this company really went back to thinking much like what you refer to as an entrepreneur, right? So here is a Chinese company trying to make headway into US a few years back and trying to think of what it should do differently. And one would immediately think of product innovation, distribution channel innovation. What this company did differently and what the CEO really did is that he turned a traditional structure of senior, middle, and lower management on its head. He actually cut down the entire middle management. So rather than have middle managers across a matrix organization, they set up close to 700 teams with cross-functional people. The success of that is that they actually gained market share and were able to consistently improve their performance. It is now a case study, and several other companies are trying, and they're really not able to fathom how such a large company present across different geographies was able to show quantifiable results by trying a very different innovation on the organization structure. So that's one. I think it's not about just product innovation or getting out there and inventing stuff. I think it's about ways of working, and that's where the innovation lies. The other thing is about a company which really thinks of, and I think the previous panel was asked this question, is it the customer is your priority or is it your employee? And Starbucks is a fine example to actually show that when employees are at the heart of your decision making, you can create a very successful company which doesn't need tech innovation, which will not get disrupted. Because if your focus is right, delivering that unique experience around the world with their 24,000 stores, and that is innovation to my mind. It is actually using the organization culture as a strategic advantage.
So Abhishek, you are in a very interesting industry, real estate, construction, one of the largest employers of a very different kind of people. But again, interestingly, it is dirt and grime and everything, but then construction and realty sector is a great adopter of smart buildings and digital and all of that. So as you look at your workforce and everything and you think of workplace innovation, is it about a driving business logic, or is it simply the fear of not being able to attract the mass of young people and bright people that you have managed to attract to your company?
Well, to be frank, I'd say it started off with the fear of missing out. The saying that will we be left behind, will we not be able to attract the talent, will we sort of miss out on being a company which is a preferred employer and so on. But I think over time, I think for many companies it might start there because you haven't yet dived in and experienced what the upside could be, but you see your peers or competitors do it and then you say you also have to do it. But as you dive into it, you clearly see there is business logic. So many organizations across the world are constantly innovating and improving because it creates an upside. A few years ago, as we were sort of thinking about how do we update our corporate office, and one started looking at great corporate offices across the globe, and we've all heard the story of the sort of Michelin or equivalent chefs at the Google campus and so on in their canteens and so on. And does it make an impact? Yes, and the answer is yes, it does make an impact, because when an employee feels valued, when an employee feels that he or she is experiencing the very best things that he or she can, when an employee feels that the workplace is best in class, then the employee connects in a different manner to the organization and the delivery does go up. So we've experienced the fact that yes, there are two sides of the same coin. You enter in because you're paranoid about missing out, but with an innovative focus and a organization which knows how to create value out of change, you can benefit meaningfully from what's happening in the workplaces today. Today, I'll share an anecdote about a growing but large property consulting organization which had its office in BKC. They ran out of space, so they sent half their team to WeWorks, which is also opened in BKC. And now they bought the office next door, fitted it out, expecting these guys are going to come back, and they've just flat refused. We aren't coming back. And it's really driven by the fact that yes, we want to be far away from the boss, but that's not the point. The point is just that the WeWork office environment is more stimulating. There are more connections. There's not just the ability to meet with your colleagues within the organization, but to meet with people across different kinds of businesses, different kinds of mindsets, and that stimulates the conversation. The Thursday evening and the Friday evening are as good as going out to a nice pub or a nice bar, and that's all getting integrated within the workplace. And when you see those kinds of things happening, the question is, has that brought down the productivity? Are they having too much fun and therefore not doing work? And the answer is no. They are having a lot more fun and they are being a lot more productive. And that really, I think, is the win-win trade-off that a well-managed 21st century workspace can bring.
You give me a segue to a very controversial subject that I struggle with, and that's a question for all of you. Any of you can take it. On one side, we talk about we work, we live, remote working, gig workforce, amoeba organization, anytime work, any place work, plug and play and all of that. Then suddenly I'm told that IBM and Apple are redesigning workplaces to provide for more employee interaction so that there is exchange of ideas and more innovation and all of that. Then suddenly I read somewhere Jack Ma comes and says, if you are not ready to work for 12 hours a day for 6 days a week, I think you should forget any productivity and prosperity. I'm both a business leader and an HR leader. I wear many hats. So I'm struggling. Now, where is the reality, And what's going on? Are we living through a confused generation that hasn't got its strategy clear? Then are we going to create that we work, we live, remote gig, freelancers and that setting? Or are we again going back to reconnecting employees, bringing them together, more and more people creating campuses and buildings. So what's happening here? Any one of you?
I think sometimes I believe we give too much importance to ourselves. And I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, history repeats itself. I mean, if you just rewind and think about having to work in Europe when the Industrial Revolution was on, and just put yourself in the shoes of the person who didn't have a job when machines got invented. So every generation, as you know, the generation gaps, you know, there's a senior person on a panel or in the company, or a senior HR person and the new person, and there'll always be a Google, there'll always be an FB, there'll always be a WeWork. Every 10 years, if you scan corporate history, we've always seen changes. The issues are fundamentally the same. So I personally don't believe, although I've had the fortune of doing and being given leadership roles at a younger age, I don't believe that the problems change. Every organization, every generation feels they're very special. There's something about the gig or X, Y, Z, and we keep naming each other in every generation. But yes, the real thing that we don't forget to address is it is going to change. Today, WeWork is popular. I personally believe, although I'm still under 40, I do believe to have my sanity and to take decisions, I need a room and some peace of mind. So I'm not at all saying that I can take all my decisions sitting at a Starbucks or having 10 people working in the same space that I do.
So you just refer to your biological age or mental age, emotional age?
Both,
Or what age? Yeah.
both, right? So I'm saying that fundamentally, the way that we do our work changes all the time because tech revolutions happen every decade. The price of tech goes down, connectivity improves. That is going to happen, that's a given. But I somewhere fundamentally don't believe that we are a confused generation. We've always been confused, Tantru. Whether when you join the workplace, when I join the workplace, or the next person joins the workplace. But what is interesting today, and what is really changing is, younger people are feeling more empowered to ask questions and to demand taking decisions. So the fact that that team doesn't want to move from workplace or WeWork is very different. If I rewind in 2003, and if in Taj Hotels, if you didn't go to the MD's conference room for a meeting, it was a big thing. So culturally what is happening, I think that is the piece that we're missing. Tech is just an enabler, but our brains are getting wired differently. They are asking questions. I am entitled to 4 weeks of leave. You know, I don't care about productivity. I don't care about my KRA. Please finish my appraisal because I want to go on a road trip with my significant other, right? So I believe that that is the issue that is really big in the room, whether it's diversity, whether it's LGBT. Culturally, people are getting wired differently as they did maybe 10 or 20 years back.
One of you? Yeah.
If I can, sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just going to add that, you know, my point really was that there's always a generation next. So every generation brings a new interpretation, by which time technology is in a different place, so those two kind of come together. It is true that work is no longer a place. Work is a part of our life, wherever that happens. But I have seen in our company, we've had some really interesting learnings. We've had Flex for the last 14 years now, so which essentially means you can be anywhere. We call it flexibility. You can attend your child's price distribution ceremony. You can take your parent to the hospital, and nobody asks you what you're doing at that point in time and where you are, as long as you're delivering on what you're supposed to, you're creating the impact. We're now finding that there's a distinct difference of engagement and connectivity where we have branch offices and where we don't. So for our virtual offices, as we call them, where we don't have a branch office, there's definitely a difference in linkage to the corporation, understanding of the value that we're driving, understanding the impact, understanding opportunities. So we're having to work harder in those spots, in those areas, in those cities, and India is a highly distributed market, as we know. So that is a learning. In the US, interestingly, we're not seeing those differences, and I got back to India after 15 years. In the US, people were really happy to be left alone if they were working in Duluth, for instance, and that was absolutely fine. In India, we are finding our Ahmedabad guys want to visit Delhi or want to visit Bombay or want to visit Bangalore and be connected. So that's interesting. We're trying to understand how far you can push it, but every country, every generation gives you cues. Our job as leaders is to put our ears on the ground, understand and adapt, and not just take one way and stay with it or stick with it, because that half-life has changed quite dramatically. Everything is shorter and faster now.
So Abhishek.
If I could add to that, I think the big change, as was mentioned, I think is in expectations and culture. I think today's workforce expects and thinks it can have it all. In the workspace, I want flexibility. I want to have a creche because if I want to care for my child, I want that. I want to have fun with friends, so I want a kind of a hangout cafe environment in the workspace. And I want, when I want to work very hard and still take an hour to go to the gym, I want that. So I think it's the coming together of what one wants at home, what one wants outside in social life, and what one wants at work coming together, because work is becoming such an increasingly dominant part of our existence. And if we force people to make the trade-offs that while doing work you can only do what is traditionally defined as work and not do everything else, I think lives become unsustainable because the trade-offs are too big. And I think forward-looking workplaces, and as more and more millennials see these forward-looking workplaces, they expect it in their own workplaces too, that these trade-offs are not forced upon people. And therefore I think this whole idea of whether I want to work from home or work for office is a trade-off maybe of 10-15 years ago. Today I want to work from office because I want to be around my colleagues and have that personal interaction, but I want the flexibility of being able to do what I would otherwise be able to do at
So
home.
it's not either or, I want both as a
I want
choice
both.
so that I can be dynamic.
In the US, they say that everybody is born a Democrat and then become Republican. Everybody is a millennial coming in, then they'll become the oldies, whatever the generation gets called up.
So, Santrupa, I'm going to take this bit on a philosophical level.
No, sure.
On why people work. Okay, and sometimes I believe all this fun at work and work environment is bit overplayed. And when I look at why people work, nowhere does it say people work because they want to have fun at work. Okay, people work because they want to thrive in personal life, professional life, in the society. People work because they want to, at the lowest level, have financial security. Next level will be well-being, emotional and physical. Next level will be empowerment, ability to shape the future, my own future, future of the place that I work in. And the highest level will be to find purpose and meaning in what I am doing. Okay? Nowhere does it say that I must have fun at work. But it does mean that I should have fun while I'm working, in the sense of enjoying what I'm doing. Okay? And not having birthday party celebrated, cake cutting happening, and having a beer in the afternoon on Friday or stuff like that. And I think it's just overplayed in my view.
So please meet the Jack Ma of India.
No, I didn't say you have to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I didn't say that. The second thing I want to say here is that this is where there's a huge difference between the way the Gen X looks at work and the way millennials look at work. For Gen X, even today, there's a boundary between work and personal life. There's a boundary between work and home in some sense. For millennials, there is no separation. While I am at work, I'm also doing what I want to do at home. While I'm at home, I'm doing work. And therefore, to try and separate, multitasking is something that millennials want to do. We used to have a policy in our company that there are certain websites that have nothing to do with work you cannot access during work. And millennials just had a revolt. How can you stop me from accessing website I want to access, right? The older people were quite happy with it because I'm at work, I should only work. And then we released it and everybody's doing, they have 6 windows open and looking at various things, and we get confused if you have 2 windows open. So therefore to really understand what excites various generations at work is the most important thing in my view, and not about having fun at work by the traditional definition of what we
I think
mentioned.
fantastic. That's a great area you've taken me to, but I'll come back on a question on that one. But funnily, if I were to explicitly state my bias, I'm with you actually. That whether the whistles and bells at work are overtaking the substance of why people really work, which is
I must enjoy work.
Yeah.
I must
Of
want
course,
to come
of
to work
course, yeah.
every Monday morning,
Of
and that
course.
won't happen if I get bored at work.
But since I promised that in between I'll take 1 question and 2 comments. Please keep it brief if you have one. Particularly my question back to you is there anyone who'd like to comment on Jack Ma's famous statement that if you want productivity, prosperity, you need to work 12 hours and 6 days a week. Anyone? You want to comment on that?
Well,
yes, sir.
it's less of a comment, sir, but more of concurring with you, sir. There has to be a discrete differentiation between an opportunity and an entitlement, right? An opportunity which is offered in an organization as an employer can be a retention factor or an employee experience factor. The moment that kind of transitions towards a preconceived entitlement, it loses a distinguished factor. And I would like to have your reaction on it, opportunity versus entitlement.
Can I just make a quick comment? I think it's very important to know who's determining whether it's an entitlement. Because what the generation of yesterday might look at and say, these guys are just entitlement focused, or they have this heavy sense of entitlement. For the folks walking in through the door, it might just be, hey, that's basic, right? I should be getting that. I had a really long series last year about the same time where I listened to about 360 female employees. We called it Dialogue with Deba, essentially struggling with our metrics not moving up in India. And we listened to each and every person, and it was really funny. The majority of the women had the same grievances and the same asks as our millennial young employees that we had been listening to. And there was this 20-30% of senior female employees who called the rest, whosoever they were, whether they be young millennials, male and female included, they called everybody else entitlement oriented. And when we understood where that was coming from, it was their world of what they had done coming in through the door. If anybody did coming in through the door what they had done and now they don't want to do it, that meant they were entitlement oriented. We had to pack boxes when we came in. We didn't have computers, these guys get computers. So we just need to be sensitive as to who's defining entitlement versus
Absolutely.
opportunity, right?
Thank you for responding to that. Any other question, comment? One more, yes, please.
Yeah. So, Sadhru, I personally believe, in the context of India in particular, or maybe China, as Jack Ma says, you just have to work a lot harder and smarter. You've got to do the right things. If you've got to stand out as compared to, the general public or whatever. So, I think you've got to do both. You've got to work harder, work smarter, because there's so much of catching up that we, as a country, in India particularly.
Even the emerging markets need to catch up faster.
think so.
Yeah, okay. All right. Anybody else? Last one? Any question, comment? Otherwise, I'll move.
I think just on your Jack Ma comment, I don't think there's anything wrong with a leader who's established and had a deep impact on a society like China to be asking for 12 hours. And I'll go back to, a little bit of diversity, a little bit of entitlement. I met a lady who was probably the only lady working in a Korean company in 2014 on a panel in Singapore. And she wasn't feeling too well. She was a very, very senior lady. She headed HR for that company. And her only grouse was she had a miserable flight because for 2 days her teenage daughter was fighting with her that she did not help her enough for a US college education. And I had breakfast with that lady the next day, and what she told me and what her life was in Korea, it made me think I was living like a queen in Bombay, trust me. Because it was so hard for them and for her to imagine that she had to work for 14, 15 hours, compete with all the men, be just about getting the senior leadership. She was the only senior VP in that company. And the society is unbelievable in Korea. They expect this woman to be superhuman. And that is the reality. Sometimes sitting in India in 5-star hotels, we crib about 12 hours and 14 hours and work-life balance. I think we should stop US case studies and only focus on countries like China and Korea. Life is difficult if you're in the Eastern Hemisphere. And the faster, whether you're a millennial or you're a 60-year-old, you realize that, the better it is.
Great. Our MC, you wanted to say something?
Yes, sir. I had one question, either for the panel or even everyone in the room. How many people in this room are in their 20s? Anybody in their 20s?
You didn't invite many, I think.
There's one person there, sir. Are you in your 20s? You're offended? I was going to say, if you were in your 20s, the years have not been kind. Sorry? You're mentally in your 20s. The only thing I wanted to say was this is one of the problems that when we have these discussions about new workplaces and millennials, there are hardly any in the room. There's one lady over there. And given the youth of our country and the average age, which we're supposedly marketing to, why do we not have a millennial in the boardroom or in your marketing meetings? So that's a question I would pose there.
We do have them on a lot of our boards, specifically when we put together initiatives, we always have representation across the organization. Just as an example, we put together a volunteer committee most recently. Again, this is connected with the listing regulations and the expectations that we have now from a public company. We had a board level committee, now we've got a company committee for volunteering and for CSR, and that has about 80% people who are sub 30. We can't get very, very young because by the time we hire them, they're mid-20s. So sub 30, 80%.
Because that's something we'd love to see. I mean, almost every event that I've been to which talks about millennials hardly has any of them in the room.
But I think all the startups have millennials as board members there and CEOs and others. So, I think maybe in the big companies, there are some of them have experimented with shadow boards, kind of surrogate, entities where people are given exposure to big decisions that you could make, etc. So, but it's a very important and relevant question. But that takes us back to the point that you were making, Pawan, earlier. I read a McKinsey report that talked about that with artificial intelligence and everything coming in, which you guys use in your vehicles a lot more, etc., 375 million people would require reskilling because their jobs would get impacted. And simultaneously, we're saying this multi-generational workforce where the older millennials are getting into CXO roles, and the Generation G, the first ones, have started coming into workforce. So in this multi-generational workforce, this challenge of reskilling people to keep them relevant and going with lifespan increasing, how big a challenge it is going to be at workplace? Because that's a big innovation we would require to reskill such large number of people. And what do you think really corporates can do, are doing to address this issue?
So, Santrup, I have no doubt that the biggest challenge that our country faces in the future is to find enough meaningful jobs for the full population that we have, and the reskilling that is required for it sometimes is underestimated, and I think it's a huge task. Now, when we talk in most of such gatherings, we actually are talking about only 3 to 5% of population. 95% of population we don't even have a feel for as to what kind of work they are doing and what will it take to reskill them. Just today, in one of my reviews, we are talking about how we can do something to replace farm labor. And my question was, okay, we'll replace the farm labor, where will they go and what will they do?
Great.
Because it's not easy for these people to come and start working in factories, and even the factory jobs that we have today may not exist, and in fact will not exist tomorrow. So the reskilling you have to look at in many different buckets. One bucket is what we consider white collar, and perhaps reskilling of white collar by and large can happen. Not easy, but can happen. I cannot imagine, and nobody has been able to give me a good answer to it, how will I reskill my workman on the shop floor who is tightening a bolt day in, day out for last 20 years? How will I reskill him in the age of Industry 4.0? I have no clue. I cannot imagine what will we do with millions of drivers that India has who are making their living driving vehicles or buses or trucks if we had autonomous cars or trucks. I cannot imagine what people working on the farm would do if suddenly the farm work is automated, which is very easy. It's not difficult to automate farm work. And what is employing 40% of India can easily be done by 5% of India. What happened to those 35% people?
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims that Israel has done a lot of productivity improvement using
So therefore, this is a very big concern that I see, and the advanced words or developed word, Western word talks about the new skills that are coming in. I don't see enough of that job getting created in India to be able to take care of all the people who will be displaced with new technology coming in. So that is a big concern.
So
I don't
that's
have
a
an
fundamental issue of workplace innovation we need to think about than other things. Any other comments on that, on reskilling,
I was just going to say real estate is our only hope, right? Real estate is our only hope.
Real estate perhaps is also over-employing people. I mean, if you automate construction, half the people won't have jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I think the only hope really is to grow the size of our economy, because today the size of the economy, given the scale of the population, we are just not going to have enough remunerative or productive work available in the workforce. And while we are growing, and that's a whole new discussion, but really the solution can only possibly lie in having a much bigger economic pyramid, which enables more and more of India's workforce to possibly be gainfully employed. But that's a big discussion.
I think
Unfortunately, a lot of employment in India is coming from inefficiency of our work.
I know.
And as we become more efficient, the employment will disappear. Forget about even technology.
Underemployment is happening significantly. Yeah.
Look at airports, 4 people
Of course.
standing there. You go to London, you'll find half a person standing there.
Only a brief comment, yeah.
I think more than just skilling, honestly, the thought that keeps me awake is the societal shift that we will have to go through. Because the jobs at the top will only become thinner as decision making itself becomes fairly automated with AI and other algorithms coming in. I think what worries me deeply is that 20 years later, are our children going to be okay being mechanics? Because there won't be enough jobs even if you graduate from Harvard or Stanford. I think the societal shift is what is more frightening than the huge task of reskilling. Because I think reskilling we've done, as I quoted earlier, industrial revolution happened to us and IT was there, other forms of jobs were created. But is the society ready to have one child be a chef and the other be a managing director? I think that is the harder work.
So on the lighter side, the solution could be that work week becomes 20 hours. Then everybody will have work.
It could be, it could be. So with that, I hand it over to MC. I don't have a summary or a conclusion, no need, because the panelists were very self-evident. Thank you all for being so candid, and both for and against Jack Ma and variants of that or whatever that is. Thank you.